So, they talk about pivoting. I'm pivoting as a moderator today. So, there you go. So, of course, we are here to celebrate the launch of a book, When the Ground Shifts. So, the timing of this book is perfect. We are being forced to do a hard reset on what we thought we knew about our careers and pivot ourselves to continue our careers. Analysts predict that over 300 million jobs will be directly impacted due to AI disruption by 2030. That's a big number. Careers today don't move in straight lines anymore. They pivot, they pause, they get disrupted, and sometimes they even start over. We have on stage great leaders who have been coaching and mentoring hundreds of people firsthand in this once-in-a-lifetime transformational journey. So let us learn from them on what they have to say about these three things: the importance of pivoting and reinventing careers, the impact of intelligence on careers, and some practical guidance that we can start implementing today to reinvent ourselves. So I'm honored to share the stage with Shyam, Sadasivan, Shiv, Kumar, and thank you, Mr. Nathan, for that very insightful talk. Yeah, thank you. So to set the context, so Shyam, let's start with you. Yeah, how do you describe what is happening right now with AI adoption, and what are some of the recurring challenges and conversations that you're having these days?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Chandra did say don't be anxious, but I am. Not because I don't know what to say, but because I don't want to let this gentleman down. I'll try my best. Thank you for the question. Pleasure to be here. I'm not an AI expert. I spent all my time coaching and training leaders. And the distinction I'd like to make about technology in general, AI disruption in general, is a quote that's helped me for many years. It is not the change that does us in, it is the transition. And changes are not transitions. Changes are external. Things are changing all around us all the time. We talk about VUCA and all of that. And there are antidotes to things like VUCA. The challenge is not the change itself. It is the transition that you have to go through. The change is external. The transition is internal. So the question in my practice becomes, what does this change mean to you? And do you know that? And that is where we would begin. The biggest, I think, temptation is to simply fire up your computers and start learning Claude. We start with the tool. Claude is a tool. AI is a tool. We should probably start with our mindset and not the tool set. Sometimes we go one level above the tool set and start with the skill set. Skill set is learn how to use AI. Tool is Claude itself. But the mindset is what? What am I here to do? Why am I here in the first place? What is the transition I would like to ease for myself? Right? And if we start with that question, the journey becomes a little easier. You might not get the answer immediately. I love Nathan sir's story about if someone comes to you with a problem, don't say anything, just kind of talk to them, which is what I do for a living. But that's exactly what a coach is. The coach does not give you the answer, right? The coach helps you to find the answer. But for that, you need to have the right question. So please, as we start looking at AI, have the question that seems right to you in front of you before you go straight into the skills and the tools conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shyam, the thing is, I think one of the things we have to understand is we have to understand the inner journey is very important, and distinguishing between the tools and the mindset. I think that is the two things that I can take away from this. So moving to Shiv, typically we tend to associate AI with code or automation, right? And how you are seeing the AI disruption in the non-tech sectors, right? Most of them we hear talk about technology as such, but then what about the non-tech sectors? And your thoughts on how large is the AI blast radius? So.
Great, thank you for the question and congratulations, Chandra. So, when we speak about AI, so one thing that I'm an eternal optimist. So we've spoken about, advent of computers. we had the Industrial Revolution, we had Y2K, and off late we had RPA, IoT, you name it. Every time there's something new that came up, then the world would go berserk, and then they'd be like, oh my God, there's going to be job loss, this and that, and whatnot. Yes, there were job losses, that did happen, but humanity humanity continued just the way it is, right? With certain changes, with certain pivots, so on and so forth. So I think while AI is going to make a difference, but it has made a difference. How many of you planned your itinerary on, let's say, ChatGPT or Claude when you were traveling? And there you go, right? So it's no more about tech. So when I was traveling, and whenever I travel, I use it to plan my itinerary to the last minute so that I'm sure that, okay, fine, it is going to be perfect, one, because it is looking at multiple reviews, it is looking at various other things. Last evening, my partner was looking at his IT returns from the past year, and then I'm like, he's already filed it with the chartered accountant. So what are you really doing? I want to check if the chartered accountant did a good job or not. And I'm like, okay, you have a chartered accountant who's so qualified, he planned it for you. No. Then he went back and put it on ChatGPT and figured out that the chartered accountant had done his job, but not very well. So the amount that we paid the chartered accountant was slightly higher than what we should have actually paid. So the point I'm making is that it's no more technology, right? It is in everyday life that AI has now come in and disrupted the way we look at things. But as I mentioned, new technology will keep coming, new ways of looking at things will keep happening. But the blast radius, of course, it really depends on how you wish to use it, whether you're going to use it to augment and look at your tax returns again, or you want to look at it differently. So I would say that it has been happening in the past as well.
Thank you so much, Shiv, for that. I think it's about where you're going to use it and how you're going to use it, and that probably will help you to pivot at some point as well. So, Shiv, this is for you. Our workplaces today, the thing is technology, AI, and shifting business models are redefining work faster than ever before. So from your vantage point as a HR leader, are our organizations and our workforce truly prepared for continuous disruption, or are we still managing careers with a stable world mindset?
Yeah, Nathan's here. He's spent more time than I have in human resources, but I'll give it a shot. So I think we are still stuck with a stable mindset, kind of mentality. Because job descriptions, how many of you joined an organization where they gave you a job description when you were interviewing? All of you, whoever is working, right? But when you join the organization and imagine it's 12 months, are you still sticking with that job description? We are not, right? So it evolves, it changes, so on and so forth. So the point still remains, and that is when we are looking at job descriptions as HR professionals, as business leaders as well, we look at it, from a stable mindset perspective. But that is not the reality. Today, when I joined this organization, they'd given me a very beautiful, again, for the purposes of, because it's getting recorded, whatever I'm speaking, is not to be taken as my company's stand. It is my personal view, yeah? So the point I'm making is when I joined this organization, my job description looked very different, but the organization changed and my job description needed to change accordingly. So we approach, whether it's HR organizations or organization in general, approach it from a very stable mindset perspective, one. Second, who knew 1 year back or 2 years back that AI would come in and we would look at it very, very differently? Now, are we going to go and make changes to every job description in the company? Perhaps not. But do we need to adapt? Perhaps yes. That is one other point. The other important aspect is our learning mechanisms in organizations. Again, they are slightly archaic. And that is something that needs to evolve as well. So I would say we're still in a very stable mindset mentality, whether we are individuals, whether we are organizations, whatever the case is. And I think that's why this book will help us quite a bit.
I have a follow-up question for that. Okay. So what capability do professionals need today that they didn't need 10 years ago? And what do organizations need to let go in terms of its policies and practices to help employees build a career?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So, in my mind, firstly, I think the world, somebody mentioned VUCA world, and every day is very, very different. So, there are two things that come to my mind immediately. One is to be comfortable with ambiguity. I think that is going to be like very, very, very important because every conversations that I have with my business folks, of course, I don't understand half the things that they are saying, I mean, to be honest. But sometimes even they don't understand what they are saying because tomorrow looks very different. So that is point one. So how are you comfortable with dealing with that ambiguity, point one. Secondly is learning to learn. And, for students in the room, I think that's going to be slightly more difficult. And I joke that I'm so glad I'm going to retire soon. Because at the end of the day, learning to learn, the way we look at that is going to evolve quite a bit. And when I say learning to learn, earlier it was all about books. It was about a stringent way of looking at things. But today you're learning on Instagram. I mean, there are so many things that I learn on Instagram. Then you're learning, of course, on Facebook, if you're still on Facebook. Of course, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So these are the two important things from an individual perspective. I would say being comfortable with ambiguity, learning how to learn. Or, as we HR professionals call it, learning agility. So, whatever word you'd like to use. Now, coming to what organizations need to do, firstly, understand that the world is not going to be the same. And whether we are nimble, we are agile, and we are able to adapt adapt what the employees want, one, and what the world is looking forward to. Now, is that going to be an easy story? In my mind, no, it's really not going to be an easy story at all. So we need to move away from the traditional ways of learning. We need to move away from the traditional ways of performance management as well. I think that's going to be super critical in my mind.
Oh, thank you so much. I can just say this, we have this word for patients who have stroke, we call neuroplasticity. And I think it's the plasticity that matters. And then it's about how well you can adapt at that given scenario and how comfortable you are with it. Yeah. Making it a second skin. I think that's something which I think most of us will have to, do it whether you like it or not. And that forced behavior is something that how you, ingrain that and how you grow out of it, I think that's what matters. Yeah. And thank you for that, answer. And I think it's very vital that we know about it. So, Shyam, who owns the career? Yeah.
HR, right?
And so, what are some of the common myths about career conversations that you've had?
Okay. Can I add on a little bit to Shiv's answer?
Sure.
Because really inspired by what you need to really take away to be thriving in today's day and age in terms of a career. One of the books that changed my life, I do not say this lightly, is Dave Epstein's book called Range. Not the Epstein you're thinking. This is David Epstein, New York Times best-selling author and journalist. He wrote a book on generalists, and I honestly believe this is the year of the generalist. Because people who are very, very good at one particular vertical specialty are feeling threatened by AI. Generalists have an opportunity to add value in more areas than one. So Epstein describes this as a kind environment and a wicked environment. A kind environment is like chess. Yeah? You all know what the moves are. I don't know, but you might know. I don't play chess, but chess is a very predictable game. But it's very hard. But it is very predictable. You know exactly who can do what. But in life, we don't live in kind environments. We live in wicked environments. Is this panel a kind environment or a wicked environment? Really? It's a kind room, but the panel structure is not exactly kind in the sense, I don't know what he's going to ask me. Or maybe I do. I don't know. So I don't know where this conversation is going to go. So it's unpredictable, it's volatile and uncertain. So if you're a generalist, you've built your value for yourself and impact through multiple areas, then you have a better chance of thriving. So that's my add-on. Who owns the career was the question, correct? Yeah. You. Your career is yours. The way I like to say it is, let me get my thoughts together. The way I like to say it is, career development is employee-owned, manager/coach supported, and organization-enabled. Unfortunately, we kind of think others own our career, which is why we are filled with regret and anxiety and sadness when someone says, hey, we are done. But really, the contract for you is that, you contribute, you get paid, and you make a difference, and the organization looks after you. Yes, but your career is yours to own. What does that mean? I was just having a chat before we started. Almost everything we'll say on the panel today, and many of the conversations will feel, I've heard this before, what's new, boss? And if you're thinking that, something I like to say in my practice is, almost everything I do is simple but not easy. It is very simple for me to say, you own your career, but it is not easy to do. So the one challenge I have for all of you, in the same way as Chandra has asked you a bunch of questions, is what are you going to do to own your career? And that jump from just thinking about simple things to doing the hard thing, if you can make that shift, that is when your ownership will begin. As my own mentor says, easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. So make the hard choices at every stage, then the life becomes easier over time. But if you make the easy choices, then life will only get progressively harder.
That's, you have put it very simply, but it's not simple, is all I can say.
It's simple, but not easy.
It's not easy.
So,
And personally, since I have transited through different paths, I know the challenges which come with it. But then you always have to challenge yourself. Otherwise, what are we? We are humans, and only humans can do that. Animals don't. I think that is a distinction we should have. Thank you for that. So now we move to the panelists here. But then I'm going to ask these questions. Thank you for that. So it's for both of you. Career reinvention sounds exciting in theory, but in practice it can be uncomfortable and even frightening, just like how you mentioned the past question. But when people attempt to reinvent themselves, where do they struggle the most? And could you share one powerful example of a career reinvention that stood out to you? And what made that individual succeed where others hesitate?
I just want to go back to the previous question for a minute, and that is, you mentioned companies paying you for the work that you're doing. So why do you think it's called compensation to start with? Right, because the big organizations are compensating you for the time, the energy, and the expertise that you bring to the table. Now, I want to answer the question that you asked. Now, if I were to extend that a little bit more, so if the organizations are compensating you for your time, then the biggest mistake that I have seen over here is attaching one's identity to that, and that's where the challenge comes in. And recently, I had written on LinkedIn as well, all the folks who have experienced job loss, asking them if they're interested in coaching and asking them to sign up. And as we are coaching more and more folks who have experienced job loss, this is the important problem. Attaching your identity with the job that you're doing for a particular organization. Now, hence when Shyam says that it is compensation, we need to perhaps start looking at it that way as well. If an X organization let go of like 12,000 people without thinking about it, then attaching your identity is the biggest mistake one can make. The other thing that we're hearing more and more is the sense of loss because you're transitioning from one role to the other. If an X role is not available, and then the choice that you have is either to move into another role or move out of the organization, that is the other loss that we're hearing more and more from a lot of people who have been impacted. So I had a similar experience to what Chandra was mentioning, and this was in one of the services organization I was in consulting, and all the projects just froze. And of course, which means you go on to bench, and when you go on to bench, you have a limited amount of time. Either you find another role or thank you, bye-bye. Right, so that's what typically happens. And I was in the bye-bye stage at that point in time, and I needed to decide whether I needed to find a job internally or just leave the organization. Of course, the rest is history. But the point I'm making is that at that point in time, since I was so caught up with the idea of being a consultant and I was enjoying that role, that nothing around me seemed to make a difference because my identity as a consultant was lost. And that was the biggest loss that I was experiencing at that point in time. And that is the biggest problem that I am seeing, is attaching that to your identity. Because who are you, in the absence of that title, in the absence of that particular company that you're affiliated with? I think that's a big one that we need to think about.
Couldn't agree more. As I've heard someone put it, focus on the verb, not the noun. So even my coach asks me, they don't say, are you a coach? They say, are you coaching? And when you focus on the verb, when you focus on the doing, it actually becomes easier. Because you then focus on what you want to do rather than who you are. And that can hold you back. You might be great at your job, but it is the job that's important, not your relationship or identity. With a great point. Your question was, what's the biggest challenge in reinvention?
Yeah. So basically, it was like, could you share one powerful example of a career reinvention that stood out to you, and what made the individual succeed?
Right. Okay, got it. So reinvention. Okay. Question to all of you: when a child is born, what do we say? This child has come dash the world. Into? Any alternates? Into? This child has come into the world. From where? This child comes from the world. No, sorry, my phone's ringing and my watch is ringing all the same time. The child comes from the world. No? We are all part of this world. The child does not come into the world. The people who I see succeeding, I don't have a particular story to share, but it's theme across all the folks I've worked with who succeed in pivots and transitions. They understand they are not doing it alone. They are part of some kind of ecosystem. Actually, the transition starts with Nathan sir's question about your strength and the number of people who cannot articulate that clearly. They know it but are unable to articulate what they are good at. What are you good at is one of the first questions I ask. And that can take hours to answer, by the way. What are you good at? What are you doing? Okay. What are you good at? Even if you know, are you able to articulate in a way the world understands? And even if the world understands, are you able to take people along in the journey? Are you willing to ask a coach, a mentor, a sponsor? I think we were going to talk a bit about, so you've had a coach, some of you maybe. Some of you may have had a mentor. Some of you may have had a sponsor. Is there a difference? Coach, we had a story earlier. A coach helps you find the answer by asking great questions. A mentor gives you the answer. What does a sponsor do? They make you the answer by calling people and say, hey, this person's amazing. Right? So a coach helps you to find the answer. A mentor gives you the answer. And you can play all of these roles. I mean, my coaching conversations, I would not say are kind of traditional 100% only coaching. There's a mix of everything. The point I'm trying to make is this. Don't do it alone. Find a mentor, find a coach, find a sponsor. They are the ones who will help you to get where you want to get and kind of nudge things along the way, because as we started today, no career is a straight line.
Can I add a story? So as you were speaking, I suddenly remember there was an example of, when people do the jobs, they don't realize how good they are in what they do. And I had a secretary. I actually wanted a stenographer. I mean, some people in this room will know who a stenographer is. They would take shorthand, Pittman. And now you don't have to do that. You just have to speak into a phone, it translates, and it does all that stuff. So I had a stenographer and interviewed some half a dozen people. This was in Hyderabad where I was working. And I found this person to be, if you leave recruiting to the hands of people who are not qualified to look for the right qualities, we would have lost the plot. My HR colleagues told me that he's too short and he's too plump. He's fat. You won't like him. So I said, first of all, remove all this stuff from your head. Let's just bring everybody on. So anyway, I found this guy. He was, as my colleagues described, he was like a torpedo. And in my head, all I was telling myself was, God, just give me the patience to live through this interview and find the best that I can in this person sitting in front of me. After about 20 minutes, I knew that he really was good with what he was. So I made a offer to him, and I said, look, you can join us, but promise yourself that in 18 months, you will no longer be a stenographer. If you're okay with that, come and join. So he came and joined, and he then went into operations. He was really good in operations, except he didn't know that. He didn't know that he was good in operations. He went into, and then after 10 years, he comes in to my house on a Sunday morning, and he says, I've got something to show you. And he says, I want to leave this firm. And I was flabbergasted. So, but he still insisted, you must see what is inside. So I opened it. I said, welcome to so-and-so as the general manager, so-and-so, and thank you, etc. And he looked at me, and I said, I think you should take this up. Now, Nagraj is the Vice President Human Resources of a very large multinational, again in Hyderabad. What was he at one point in time? A stenographer. Except in each one of us, we have no idea what we are capable of. You just need to hear two qualities that you could make out even when you were in an interview setting. He was very curious, always looking for patterns. I ask him a question, and after answering this, he will say, may I ask another question? And he was always very curious to know. I think, adding to what you just mentioned, I think we need to be very curious. We read papers, we look at patterns, we look at all this, and we say, oh, what does this mean to me? The other thing is, it's not about a job. It is never about a job. You can easily get a job, but you have to build a career. You have to build a career, which means you may have to pivot, you may have to move, you should be very uncomfortable with what is most uncomfortable. And if you can do that, because all he said was, but sir, I'm after all BSc Physics. But what he did not say was, he was after all BSc Physics at 86% from Madras University. Amazing, 86% in physics from Madras University, he must be on top of the pops. Except sometimes we underrate ourselves. We discount ourselves. Why? Because progressively we keep applying for jobs, we don't get jobs, we say, maybe I'm not very good. So back to where we started, I think it's a lot about understanding that it's not the job that you need, it's a career that you have to build. And you have no. And the other thing that I wrote as both of you were so eloquently speaking about this was something which I call as a fog of war. When there is a war going on and somebody just throws a grenade or something and everything, you can't see. You can't see within 2 feet of yourselves. You can't see anything. But you do know that you have to just keep walking through the fog. Even when walking through the fog, you don't know. You're still very uncertain. But the fact is, you're still making progress because you're walking through the fog. So, those are my 2 cents.
And that was lovely. I mean, it was very well. But we had the childlike attitude. That's what, being curious. And I think that was what my journey was about as well. I was being curious. Okay, if this doesn't work, why it doesn't work that way? First, that self-inquiry should always be the cornerstone. And you work from that. It's the seed for most of the growth. And, thank you all for that beautiful answers that you were able to put forth with this audience. So, Shiv, just a couple more questions. Yeah. We have to reinvent ourselves and at the same time learn and be ready for the future. Learning for many comes through experience. So what is your take on side hustles, right? Is there any, there should be a distinction between moonlighting and side hustles. What is it? And what should we do to make sure we remain within the organizational boundaries, but at the same time be ready for careers in AI?
Wow. Okay, so we have somebody from Randstad here. I'm not able to find the person where the person is, but there's a work monitor report from Randstad, that mentions that about 40% of the workforce already has a side hustle. This is a global statistic. Do you know what the number is in India? Any guesses? 70. Close. It's 60%. So if you think that people do not have a side hustle of some sort, we're fooling ourselves as employers. So 60% have it in some form or the other. Now, whether that is, I mean, you want to call side hustle is pro bono or that makes money, that's a different conversation. But something or the other is going on. And should one have a side hustle? Oh, absolutely, please have a side hustle. Again, I'm speaking in my personal capacity. So, but now coming to the other part of the question, and what is the difference between side hustle and moonlighting? Till there is no conflict, it is, with the nature of primary source of work. That is one. And secondly, you're transparent with your employer, and the employer has no, I would say, concern with it. I think, that is perfectly fine. So from that perspective, one is side hustle and one is, moonlighting. Now, what I see, especially the younger folks, is that they've just grown up with it. Especially the Gen Z folks who are entering the market, the labor market, they've just grown up with it. And to them, it is just a natural way of life. But it is the people, of like my generation perhaps and prior who have a different view about side hustle altogether. So I think that definition needs to change. All of us need to have side hustles. Now we need to figure out how to monetize that. I mean, that is another way. And I think in Chandra's book, he mentions about having multiple streams of income. How do you ensure that you are financially comfortable in many ways? And this is the only way that you could be. I'm going back to my compensation point again. It is compensation, right? God knows when that compensation will stop, right? So that is why if 60% of the workforce is already having a side hustle, there is nothing wrong in having a side hustle.
The majority wins, right?
Yes, exactly. Was there a part of the question that I didn't answer?
Okay. What should we do to make sure that we remain within the organizational boundaries, but at the same time be ready for careers in AI?
Okay, so like I mentioned, there needs to be transparency. So wherever the organizations ask for, going ahead and speaking to your managers or your leaders, please go ahead and speak about that before you venture into a side hustle. I mean, that is going to be very, very important. And when it comes to AI, I think everybody's using it in some form or the other, but now how do I make use of it? Like, for example, we have Men's Circle and, various other things that I'm a part of. We use AI big time over there, whether it is, for the purposes of communication, for example, or even in our efforts from a diversity inclusion perspective. A lot of stuff is used from an AI perspective itself there. So I think it is no more a question of if I wish to use it, but you have to use it. I mean, there is no other choice.
So embrace it.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. Yeah. Sure, please.
I love the word side. I've really struggled with the word hustle. Because I think as a combination, the concentration is more on the hustle than the side. Because the hustle is unrelated, like even a stock market investment is called a side hustle. Actually, technically speaking, if you have money in the stock market, you're earning money from it, that is a side hustle. But then the hustle is like, put money in some whatever, shady stock or, take some chances. But the emphasis is on the side. Do something adjacent to you, right? And that is my story. I started in engineering. I was always adjacent to marketing. I was literally sitting on the edge of the, room. Guess where I went next? Marketing. Where did I go next? Operations. Where did I go next? Operations was doing budgeting for HR. Where did I go? HR. So focus more on the side, and I'm a huge proponent of internal mobility. You will get incredible opportunities inside. If you're thinking of next steps, growing career, you can find opportunities internally. You can do other things outside, of course, drama, theater, whatever. But if it is actually music, I have a huge interest in music as well. So the idea is to focus on the side in order to look at the career options rather than the hustle side, which is hustles and hacks I rarely use in my work because it has a sentiment of quick buck, which I think we should, if we are thinking long-term careers, if you're going from hack to hustle, I don't think it works. But if you are living in that side adjacency, there's magic in the intersections of things, I think that could be a good approach.
Yeah, well put. So the last session we're going to talk about which is going to be open to the audience. But then before that, let me talk to all the three of you. So what are some of the key things you loved in this book or that gave you this aha feeling? Would you like to start?
This book There are two things that I loved about this. You got a number of chapters. All of them at the end of that would give you a summary of what that chapter is about. So in case you're in a bit of a rush, you want to read that whole, maybe some 100 plus or 150 plus pages that you have, you do nothing, get to each chapter. At the end of that, you will find that nugget. I believe that if you have to mine something, you have to dig for it. But if you want some ready money, ready gold, then that's what you find there. Second one is, somewhere if you turn towards the last few pages, you're struggling to find out where is what. You will find that there is one table. That table will tell you, for this, you need to look at this chapter with these paragraphs or some reference to this. It's almost like, and I was almost tempted to say, this is your bot, except that you don't interact with that the way that you normally do. But this is a live bot. Is there in the book. Incredible. Thank you very much.
Loved that bit for sure, and Chandra pointed me to it, where if you have a question, you can go to a section in the book, find the question, and then go to the chapters that answer that question. I thought that was beautiful reverse engineering there. Lovely. I love the images. I'm visual, so it helps me with that as well. In terms of one idea that I really liked was the reason why we are in Nehru jackets today, matching. The career fitting room. I thought the analogy was amazing, because even when I finished school, it was basically doctor, engineer, law, IAS, or whatever. And nowadays, you're walking into the shop, the options are endless. The options are absolutely endless. So I think a lot of heavy lifting needs to happen before you enter the shop. You need to know what you're there for. Otherwise, you're going to be there forever and spend 10 times your budget. From a clothes perspective. But from a career perspective, have some clarity as to what you're looking for. It'll just make that journey easier. So I found that career fitting analogy really useful.
For me, in addition to what both the gentlemen mentioned, was normalizing the conversation of layoffs. I think that was big for me. Most of the time, it is associated with shame and hopelessness and helplessness as well. But the way Chandra has put it in terms of future-proofing it through those questions, and it's like a workbook as well in many ways. For me, that is something that stood out because it is high time we start normalizing the conversations of layoffs. There is no shame in it at all. It was never your decision to start with. So I think that stood out for me.
Can I add one more thing? People who have the book with you, can you just see that there is something very special about this? You will find that as you see this, and you will find that this is actually almost like, not embossed, but super boss. And I like this. I like both the fact that, that you had a compass, because that is what this book is about. But I was absolutely in love with it, and I asked Chandra about it, and I said, hey, how the hell did you manage to do this? So he says, I did that layout, I used ChatGPT, but I went back to ChatGPT and I said, hey, can you make this something very special? So it says, hey, why didn't you do this? You get this. Then you ask this printer, they'll superimpose some. I just loved it. Thank you.
Adoption of technology, right? And way of doing it. That's great. So I would like to hear one or two, at least few of them, the audience who have had a chance probably to have a preview of the book or who have gone through the book to just share your thoughts if they have, or your own feeling about how the AI or how the career perspectives are going to be shaped.
Hello everyone. So my name is Sandeep. I'm not a book person. And when I think my ground was shifting, right? When I quit my job, out of a lot of things in my brain, right? That I quit Microsoft and I was pivoting well, right? So I wanted to do something for the people who are being laid off. Probably, it's chapter 5, it is written about building a GPS, right? Which helps people. When we know what is GPS, it's about multiple satellites sending signals, right? And you holding your phone, collecting a lot of informations. then probably giving signal to someone that there is something ahead, right? You need to navigate through and all, right? So, and probably it's everything in my brain. I was not reflecting on, and I just put something in LinkedIn. I think that's where Ramarajan, I think that's where Chandra was tagged. And I went to Chandra's profile, I found this book, and this is something I wanted to read, right? And just the way Mr. Nathan said, you should not rush into it, but I kind of rushed into it. Within 3 days, I completed it. And that's how I am, right? Looking into any series, I can't wait for what's coming next. I will just complete it, right? I take leave from the job and I complete it, right? So that's how I am, right? So I just got into it, and every chapter, the curiosity in me was continuously increasing, and I was connecting so well. And that's where, I felt like this is just for me. And my ground was shifting. And I felt that, okay, I'm getting somewhere, and it's all right direction. Person with 25 years of experience is writing it, right? And there are a lot of people like me probably wants to help people. And my question, right, what I wanted to bring a question about is GPS. This is something I connected really well, because this is something I'm kind of working. And it's talk about an ecosystem, right? And it cannot happen by one person, maybe this book alone, right? So it's more about where can we share those informations to others, right? As you rightly mentioned, coach, mentor, everyone plays a role. But where do we find that? The world is so packaged, right? So you go for asking for a course, you get all generalized course, right? Because it is packaged, it is sold to you like that, right? But I think, everyone should read this book, right? Everyone should understand that they should come out of the shell, right? And they should start doing something about helping others. And I came here with gratitude, right? I was not supposed to be here. I never imagined I will be somewhere in the book launch, but I came here with the gratitude. And this is what would change life. And thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Well said. You're most welcome here, because I think it's about not settling to one perspective of who we are rather than who we become. And I think for that, what matters is that curiosity that you mentioned about, and I think it's one of the cornerstones. And I think there are other things which have been shared across by all these panelists. And I'm actually honored when Chandra just said, Ajay, can you just pitch in to be the moderator? I was like a little nervous because I've not done this before. And I was not sure how it is going to pan out in front of the audience as such.
Ajay started his career as an emergency doctor. So life comes a full circle.
Oh, well, yes. Thank you. Again, it's got to do with understanding what's your second skin all about, right? And for me, it's about being ready for the challenges that are being put forward. But anyway, I would like to close this session by just thanking one and all of you for sharing your perspectives, your take on career and what it means to say when the ground shifts. So thank you once and all for all of you, and for the audience as well for coming out. And please please buy the book. And I think the Kindle or the online version is also available. But then, if you like to feel the book, I think it would be good to buy a hard copy as well, right? Yeah. Thank you so much.